Welcome to the Plug Effect Live, connecting budding entrepreneurs to tools, resources, and conversations to stay motivated, find balance, and facilitate growth. Are you plugged in? Let's educate, evolve, elevate. I am so excited today to introduce you all to Deja R, Spectrum of Love. We're so excited to plug in with her today and just get to know her a little bit better. So how are you today?
I'm good. First of all, your voice, girl. It's like everything. Like I felt that. I'm like, okay. Yes, those are gold.
Yes, we're so excited to have you and really just to learn a little bit more about your story. So just start off by telling us, who is Deja R?
Yes, so Deja, first and foremost, is a servant. I'm a servant of the Lord. And I say that because everything that I do, I make sure that I'm doing it within God's will, not my will, things that I wanted to do, that, I have to sacrifice because, of God's will. But in being in God's will, He has given me the desire to stay there. He has given me the fruit from the sacrifice, and it's so much bigger than what I thought that I would ever have. So I guess I'll start off with my son. So my son's name is Moses, and he was diagnosed with autism at 2 years old, and that was a very challenging thing considering my son's father had just passed away. We were engaged, but he did pass away. And so I was grieving that loss. And then soon after, I found out that my son was diagnosed with autism. And, that was obviously life shattering for me because I'm grieving on one hand, and then I have a son that I never really could understand. He just never seemed happy. He was just always crying and just always seemed so very angry, and I couldn't understand why. And I would say it was probably, people would say things like, hey, he's not talking, he's not looking at anyone, he kind of shies away. And then I would notice things too, but as a mom, you don't want to. You don't want to admit that something's wrong. You just want to give him time. And so, like, we would go to the store. If anyone looks at him, he will break out in a full blown tantrum for like 30 to 45 minutes. And Moses, you haven't seen him, but he's very light skinned with blonde hair and hazel eyes. Like, he's just my little recessive trait. But so he gets a lot of attention because he just looks so different. And so it was traumatizing for him to go to the store because people would always walk up to him, and and he couldn't handle the attention. He didn't want people looking at him. He didn't want people talking to him, and he was also nonverbal. So um, I said, you know what? Fine. By this particular date, if he's not speaking, then I'll go and get help. And so I did. I found out that he was diagnosed with autism, and my mental health at the time was already struggling because I just lost, the love of my life, obviously. And then his son is now diagnosed with autism. So that kind of took me on a whole journey to where I'm at now. And I have to say that without that journey, I would not be where I'm at.
Right. Wow. First of all, I just want to say thank you for your transparency. I know that your story is going to be very inspirational to other mothers out there and fathers as well who are dealing with the same thing. Um, I guess one thing I want to ask is, how did you maintain your strength?
I didn't know how to navigate life. I've been with his dad for a good 4 years prior to us having, my son. So when my new reality set in place, I was very much in a dark place. I would cry myself to sleep every night. I was depressed. I had anxiety. I was getting panic attacks repeatedly, and it got to a point where that the last time the ambulance was called because of a panic attack, they're like, hey, we're going to have to get this under wraps, or we're going to have to take your children, because you're not going to be able to care for them if you can't, get to a place where your anxiety is contained. So that was definitely a wake up call for me. And I didn't have therapy at the time. I didn't have anything but what was in my hands. So, when you go from having a two income household to now one income household, you're strained as a single mother, obviously. So I could not spend money on copays for therapy. There's a lot of things I couldn't do. So what I did have though is um, YouTube. I did have YouTube. So I would follow a therapist on YouTube and just listen to how you regulate your emotions, and just different messages that I wanted to bring out. Also watch several sermons, like literally every day. So that in turn ended up being my light. Just listening to sermons from Sarah Jakes Roberts, from Michael Todd, from Torrey Roberts, um, Stephanie Ike. I can't pronounce her last name, but we're gonna try. But there were several of them that I followed, and I would watch them day and night, and somehow that kept my spirit alive. And in that, anytime I would get low, God would bring to the forefront of my mind a message that one of them would say. So I think the turning point for me was I went with my church to a mission trip, and it was for single parents. So my mom was like, "You really need to go. I know you need the break." And so I went. She handled the kids. She took off work to take care of my son, and so I went to Costa Rica and I served on this mission trip. So these are a bunch of people I didn't know, but they were all single parents. And at that point, I'm like, I just need an out, right? So I went, and then come to find out, like, we're boarding the plane, and I realized every single one of those parents had a child with a special need or was in special education. And I'm like, this is nothing but God. But yeah, so I'm like, I want to start a center for children with autism. And I would say that that's really what it changed the trajectory of my life. It gave me purpose, but it also gave me hope that maybe if I can get my son where I truly feel like he could be, maybe I can do that for other children with autism as well.
Wow. When people think about the journey, right? I think a lot of times people feel like, something's just going to fall in my lap and I'm going to do it. So oftentimes, what leads us to our purpose is our pain.
Yes.
And I always tell people, even through some of the hardest moments of life, that's when God is showing you.
Yes.
He's trying to pull something out of you that you wouldn't naturally revert to or think to. Even in my times in my life dealing with depression, that was my therapy, with sermons.
Yes.
And it was interesting that you said Michael Todd, because he was one of the people that I thought about. Just watching him for years, and his transparency about his son,
right?
And just seeing how impactful that was to the community, to people who were dealing with that as well. Because I think in our culture we don't talk about it enough.
We don't.
And unfortunately, sometimes in other countries it's like shamed, or you know what I mean. There's not a lot of resources and things like that. As a kid, I actually went to a school that actually was open to special needs, mentally impaired, deaf children. So I actually got to grow up getting to interact with those type of children, and I think that always put something in me to have a heart for that and know that, like, this person is just like me. There's nothing that they could have done to control their situation, and they still deserve a life. They still have a life worth living.
Yes.
And so, and then also seeing the type of people that have to work with those people, right?
Right.
The type of people that have the heart to be patient, to be kind, to understand their situation, to understand that they don't always mean to be how they are.
Right.
So
Yes.
tell us about this
Spectrum of
center.
Love.
Yes.
Okay, this is Spectrum of Love is definitely a passion project, and what I did was I took my journey, all the pitfalls that I had with insurance, with him being rejected the second I said, "Hey, he has autism," in different childcare centers in different facilities. So it was kind of like, what do you do? And based off of my experience, I created Spectrum of Love. But I I want to focus on like the lead up because my business would then make a lot more sense. And the
Mhm.
ones that have children or nephews or nieces with autism, they would definitely, understand. So the journey leading up to Spectrum of Love was very hard. We had insurance, but the insurance, we gave them all these reports. They're like, hey, he has autism. They're like, yeah, that's great, but we want this particular evaluation, and sorry, we don't actually cover that, so you're gonna have to pay for it out of pocket. So there were all these different loopholes with insurance, and then when you did get the therapy, ABA, behavior therapy that you needed, they're like, oh yeah, insurance is only going to pay for 2 hours a day. I'm like, y'all. So, I would have to our schedule, which I always share this because I'm like, man, I must have been crazy. But my schedule for my son was that I would drop him off at a center to get therapy from 7 a.m. to 11:30. And then I would take my lunch break to go pick him up at 11:30, go to McDonald's, throw a couple fries or Chick-fil-A, throw some fries or some chicken nuggets in the back seat while I'm taking him over to another facility. I get there about 12:15. I will walk him in, I'll go back to work, and then I'll finish out my day and then rush back to that center. We would get home maybe like 7 o'clock at night. I'm trying to rush to feed him dinner, keeping him up because at this time, remember, he's 2 years old. So he didn't have a break. He didn't get to play, or like, he had to do work. And so, it was very hard. So when we speak about Spectrum of Love and what Spectrum of Love is, this is something where it's more like a one-stop shop. So it's childcare, but it's also medical. So I've took the childcare industry and the medical industry and merged it into one so that it is more fitting and convenient for parents who are not able to do what I was able to do. So Spectrum of Love, they ask, well, what is it? I just say, well, um, it's easy to say that it's a childcare center, but we're actually doing therapy on site. So the therapy part is free. So it doesn't matter if you have insurance. It doesn't matter if you have an official diagnosis. If you see delays, you feel like your child could use the help, then we are here to help them without restraint, without restrictions, without all of this redlining, this red tape, so we can actually help them. And the unfortunate thing about it is that a lot of people in lower income neighborhoods and areas, typically Black or brown, they don't have the resources or the insurance or the things that they would actually need to get the services that will change their child's life. So I try to build that into a program where, look, if you can get them here, just get them here. We'll do an evaluation. We'll set goals for them, and then we're going to work on this all day, every day.
Right.
And so that's literally what we do.
Wow. So you started Spectrum of Love, and when was this?
2020.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we're in 2023. So
Yes.
what has that journey been like?
It's been hard. It's been very hard because this isn't what I asked to do. I was literally leaving a career in real estate. I was selling luxury real estate. I was a relocation director. So that's what I went to school for. That's what I did. So to then listen to God and just abruptly stop that career to focus on my calling, it took everything I had, like all of my money, all of we got a check from his dad's passing. I invested every penny of that into the business. So it took a lot of faith. It also took a lot of um oh it took a lot of saying no to gurus because, first of all, if we think about it, why would you open a childcare center in 2020 when the entire world lost their job? Like, who needs childcare? Who's thinking about that? But that's what God said to do, and that's when God said to do it.
Right.
So I would say the biggest challenge in my journey was following God and just remembering something that Michael Todd always said, because I was following him heavily, was that all you have is all you need. And so I took that and I'm like, well, all I have is literally a laptop in my brain. But with but with that, I created my logo. I started topping out programs. I started evaluating, like, these are the challenges I had. In a perfect world, this is how I would solve those problems for the next family. And then I opened, and of course, COVID happened, and that was a struggle, but God was faithful during that time. We made it out of COVID. It was very hard to see, Chase and all of these major businesses close doors all around me for me to turn around and open up something that literally does not exist.
Right.
So it was very hard. It took a lot of faith, but I've learned so much. I got my skin in the game. And because I did it when God said I did it, that's the big thing. It's not just doing it when he said to do it. And typically it doesn't make sense when he says to actually do it, but I did it. And because I did it and I did it when he said to do it, the following year, there was all these grants and relief available for businesses that stayed open and provided jobs in childcare. So it was separate. There were grants for businesses that stayed open and did not lay off their staff. And then there were grants for childcare, specifically for childcare. So that took me through the entire next year. The entire next year. Mm-hmm. So like I said, it was hard, but if you stay faithful, if you just trust God and you obey and you jump to his instruction, don't sit and think about
it. Swift obedience.
Yes. Like, I would have never known. Like, if I would have listened to all the gurus and people telling me not to do it right now, wait until COVID's over, I would have forfeited a lot of blessings that God had lined up for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think one of the biggest things is, when it comes to God, it's never logical.
No.
Like, people are always looking for some logical explanation of what he's telling us to do, and it's never logical.
Ever.
But there's always power in the pivot. Right?
Yes.
And his timing is always better than our timing. And so I'm so just excited for you in this journey and look forward to following you in this journey and supporting and continuing to make sure that people are aware of all the greatness that you're doing with Spectrum of Love. But I feel like people are going to gain so much from this interview and just your story. And so I thank you for taking the time to sit with us. And lastly, I just want to ask you, in this season, what does elevation mean to you?
At the end of the day, what I've learned is no matter how much money you have in the bank, no matter how good your credit is, no matter who you're connected to, at the end of the day, you can't run from yourself. You can't fill those voids in your heart and your mind with things of this world. Like, you really have to dig in deep, get into your spirituality so that those things can be made well and whole again. And that is elevation for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Well, let the people know how they can stay connected and plugged in with you.
Yes. So I would say on Instagram, my handle is at introducing_Deja, DEJA. That would be the best way.
All right.